Alrighty, as promised, I'm going to teach dividing decimals first by integers or whole numbers, and then we're going to turn the page. This is from your notes we handed out today. Then we're going to do dividing decimals by other decimals. So let's start with 3-4, dividing decimals by integers or by whole numbers. Now what I wanted to start out showing you was demonstrating by a model how we're going to divide these decimals. The first thing we're going to do, as shown by this example, is 0.35. So what I showed you on these notes is 35 hundredths were already shaded in for you to represent 0.35. And before we go into that, let me make a couple of notes that you may want to add to your page. Just to remind you, this is a decimal grid, and each block or each little square is 1/100th. It's a 10 by 10, so we have 100 squares total. So each single block is 0.01 or 1/100th of the whole. We'd have a whole row would equal 1/10 or 0.1. So I'm going to draw a line to show that's 0.1. 1/10 or 10 out of 100 reduces to 1/10. All right, so just to get that out of the way, now what we have again is 0.35 shaded, and that's represented by those little circles. I just tried to shade it in but also show you the individual squares. So 0.35 is shaded, and I'm going to divide it into 5 groups. So I'm just going to do that roughly here. Divide those into 5 groups. So you take each group. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 groups. So I'm dividing it. We are dividing 0.35. So we're dividing it by 5 groups, and then we're going to look at how much is in each group. So we're going to count in one group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in one group, I've got 7/100ths, 0.07, which turns out to be my answer. So if I take 0.35 and I divide it by 5 into 5 groups, the answer is what I get in one of these groups, which is 0.07 or 7/100. All right, the other part that I wanted to point out to you is this part right here. If you haven't already done this, please circle this as you're doing your homework. This is the key for 3-4. Where does the decimal point go? Because we don't use a model every time. This is what we end up doing right here. We end up doing division. So I'm going to show you that right over here, 0.35 divided by 5. And here's the point I want to point out here. Notice that the decimal point in the quotient is directly above the decimal point in the dividend. And just to make sure you understand what the dividend is, the inside number is the dividend, the outside number is the divisor, and the answer is the quotient. All right? So this says that the decimal point in the quotient in our answer up here is directly above the decimal point in our dividend. So when I am dividing by a whole number out here, by an integer, then my decimal point in my answer is just going to go straight up above where it is in my dividend. And then I'm going to divide like normal, and this is when it's really important to keep your columns lined up carefully. 5 won't go into 3. But because I have a decimal point here, I can't just leave it blank. It's going to be 0 because this place value actually has some value. All right, so, and then I'm going to go to 5 into 35. 5 into 35, it goes 7 times, and then I have no remainder, so I'm done. So 0.07 once again is our answer as we showed in the model. All right, I'm going to do a few models here as demonstrated in your note page, so just try to stay with me in your notes. It says use the model to divide. It says 0.48 divided by 4. As some of you noticed, 0.48 divided by 4 was kind of hard to show, so we kind of had to think out of the box a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the highlighter here. I'm going to highlight 48 little squares here. There's 40 right there, and then I'm going to do 8 of these. So how would I divide that into 4 groups? Well, thinking outside the box, this is what I did. I went ahead and divided the 40 by 4, and then I divided this last one of 8, divided it by 4, separately. So it's going to be its own little division problem. So when I'm dividing the whole thing by 4, then I'm going to take one of these and add it to one of those for 1200ths or 0.12. And I think this is the only problem where we had an issue where we don't have 12 squares that go out to the side or up and down. It's 10 by 10, so we couldn't do 12 rows of 4. So we had to do something a little bit different. Hope that makes some sense. All right, the next one, number 2, is 1.8 divided by 3. Now notice that 1.8 is bigger than 1, so I've got to have more than one decimal grid here to represent 1.8. So I know I'm going to shade the whole thing to represent one whole. And then I'm going to shade 0.8 of this one. And that's going to represent 1.8. All right, so then I have only 2/10 left over here. So this represents 1.8. I'm going to divide it into 3 groups. And to do that, I'm going to have to figure out 18 divided by 3 is 6. So I'm going to take 6/10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to block that off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, block that off. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, my last group. So that is 3 equal groups when I divided 1.8, and I just need to look at what's in one of these groups. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and each row or column is a tenth, so 6/10, so 0.6 would be my answer. Remember division, I'm grouping these, and then my answer is how much is in each group. All right, 0.16 divided by 4. So I have 1600ths, so 16 of these little blocks. I'm dividing by 4, so I'm just going to do an easy 4 by 4. 4 by 4. It's a little messy, but. And then I'm just going to divide it into 4 groups. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and how much is in each group? 0.04. Please make sure that you don't say 0.4, because 0.4 would be 4 columns, 4/10. There is 4 hundredths in each group here, so be real careful of that. Okay, so that's the modeling of division. So let's get down to just the division with our numbers and our division problems. So 0.56 divided by 8. I'm going to put the decimal straight up. 8 won't go into 5, but 8 will go into 56 7 times. So 0.07 with no remainder. 0.75 divided by 5 goes straight up. 5 won't go into 7, so we'll have to put a 0 there. 5 goes, oh, actually it will. Never mind. 5 goes into 7 one time, and that's going to be 5, and then we subtract. So 5 into 25 is 5. So now I have 0.15 as my answer, because then I have no remainder. All right, 7.2 divided by 9. The decimal is going to go straight up. 9 won't go into 7. You can put a 0 there, but it's not necessary. It has no value. And 9 will go into 72 8 times with no remainder, so 0.8 is my answer. That means if I took 7 wholes and 2/10 and divided it into 9 groups, each group would have 8/10 in it. All right, number 7, 10.5 divided by 5. Put the decimal straight up. 5 goes into 10 twice. And then 5 into 5 one time. And I'm done, 2.1. So if I had 10.5 divided into 5 groups, each group would have 2 wholes and 1/10. All right, 6.4 divided by 16. Decimal goes straight up. 16 won't go into 6, but it goes into 64 4 times exactly. So 0.4 is your answer. 7.08 divided by 6. Decimal goes straight up. 6 will go into 7 one time. 6 will go into 10 one time. And then 6 into 48 8 times. No remainder. I'm done. 1.18. I put my decimal in its place, and then I divide like normal, and then the decimal should end up exactly where it needs to be. Make sure your columns stay straight.